Welcome, everyone! Here is a new fantasy story of mine. Here it goes! Miss Willow held an apple in her hand, bright, red, juicy, and delicious. The orchard was so full of them that apples seemed to be her common snack. She tossed it up in the air a couple of inches before it landed back in her palm. She spoke, watching it bounce up in the air. "Oh, apples, so delectable when you don't have them often, yet there's just too many now. Whatever will I end up doing with these spares? I've made pies beyond belief." She stepped out of the orchard and walked past the stone walls. They were covered in moss, ferns, and small cracks where treasures often were hidden by people passing by, to remember to pick them back up after fruit picking, but then sometimes forgot. Willow walked through the hills, a bag filled to the top with apples. She walked on, wondering how she will use them. Nobody was taking them, so she felt awful watching every day them bright and beautiful, and then falling off the trees undesired. Everyone's had enough of them, it seemed, not just her. She walked until she approached a forest full of pines and other needly trees. The forest inside was darker, and the trees were exceedingly tall. She could barely look up and see the tops of them, but the trees on the edge gave her some shade to write in her journal. She sat down, the grass around her feet and the little insects hopping around the flowers. She ate another apple and set the half-eaten apple beside her as she took some notes. She sketched some flowers she noticed along the way, and the clearing ahead of her, making just enough space to build another cabin before it stretched into another one of these tall forests. It was a beautiful valley indeed. Some mountains were behind all the scenery, mountains she recognized as dragons' homes from way before. As she sketched and wrote in her journal and diary, some twigs snapped in the forest behind her. She jumped a bit, startled. "What's that?" she said, as she turned around slowly to see a large foot of a dragon with golden yellow scales. She prayed in her mind that it was a dragon she knew, and also was kind. There were way too many instances where she minds her own business, and out pops a dragon from absolutely nowhere. It surprised her that not many other adventurers just like herself have experiences like this. In fact, many of them search tirelessly to even come across a wild dragon. To her, on the other hand, it came to her like just stepping outside. She watched as the figure moved forward, and out of the forest popped the long neck of none other than Hemlock. Willow sighed in relief. "Ooh, good morning, Lord Hemlock. Is your forests holding up well?" She greeted him. The dragon squeezed past the trees in the way, and then stumbled out into the clearing. He shook his head. His intensely long horns shook back and forth, and Willow ducked out of the way. "Careful, Hemlock, I'm right here," she called out. Hemlock stood up and looked down at her. He spoke. "Oh, miss, my apologies, I didn't see you there. I thought I heard something or someone reading out loud to themselves, so I came to have a look." He looked down and spotted her half-eaten apple. "Miss, do you know how much I've been looking for that item you've got there?" Willow shook her head, unknowing. "That apple there is quite important to me right now. I could really use some. Mind sparing a few for a friend?" he asked. Willow tossed him multiple apples without question, as the dragon caught them in his large claws. She spoke. "Here, have as many as you need. There are way too many in the orchard. Nobody is eating them," she said. Hemlock looked shocked. "Excuse me? Because I've been looking everywhere for these. I didn't think to check the kingdom at all. I need these very much so, as the dragon meeting later calls all nature-helping dragons and lords to visit. They must bring a specimen of produce or sample from whatever they deal with. For me, I am a forest protector, and trees are what I know best. But these in my forest have very little to offer me in this short of time. The apples come from very near, and are a great gift. The others will be very proud of the ripe new resources, and knowing that trees around my home are producing plentiful." Hemlock explained. Willow was very happy that she was able to help him. He never seemed to be in a hurry for anything, so this must have been very important to him. Hemlock thanked her greatly and bent his long dragon's neck down to meet her. Lord Hemlock bowed his head and said farewells, as he must leave soon. Willow finally found a use for those apples she didn't really need, and Hemlock was saved by her eagerness to save the fruit. All was well in the end. Willow walked home with just a few apples and wrote about her discovery in that journal. The end.